The chief of the Hall of Souls was slightly startled after hearing Xiao Yin agree so readily. He deeply searched Xiao Yin before faintly laughing. You are indeed sufficiently heroic. Since this is the case, friends whose strengths have reached the 4th star of the Doshang class should attack with me and finish off the purifying demonic lotus flame. The rest will have to handle the fire slaves. Leave the other fire slaves to us. Xiao Yin slightly grinned. He turned his head and softly spoke to Zi Yin and Gu Nanhai. Both of you should be careful when joining hands to deal with the purifying demonic lotus flame. Try not to use your full strength to prevent someone from launching a sneak attack on you. Zi Yin and Gu Nanhai nodded. They were not ordinary individuals. They were well aware of the current situation. If one was not careful when cooperating with those people from the Hall of Souls, one would be left with nothing. Xiao Yin, I cannot join the attack against the purifying demonic lotus flame. Once I approach it, this seal of yours will lose its effect. Moreover, I will also be controlled. Xiao Chun spoke in a hoarse voice. Ancestor Xiao Chun, there is no need for you to fight. We should always hold something back. Xiao Yin smiled as he replied. He was worried about the people from the Hall of Souls. Although the chief of the Hall of Souls would join the battle, the deputy chief and the Hun Feng, who gave him a dangerous feeling, were still around. He needed to maintain caution around those two. Xiao Chun quietly nodded in the face of Xiao Yan's words. He did not like to speak. Ever since he had been captured by the purifying demonic lotus flame back then, he had been immersed in the other party's illusion. Moreover, it was difficult for him to escape. If Xiao Yin had not rescued him, he would have sooner or later lost his mind to the purifying demonic lotus flame. He would have eventually become an ordinary fire slave that was controlled by the purifying demonic lotus flame. Having survived in the illusion for thousands of years caused Xiao Qin's temperamental character to become a lot more quiet and lonely. This loneliness had grown even greater after he heard Xiao Yin mention the decline of the Xiao clan. After all, he was no longer someone of this era. He was unable to lend a hand when the clan needed him the most. All trouble, ancestor. Xiao Yin cupped his hands to Xiao Chun. There was no need to doubt Xiao Qin's powerful strength. Even the combination of Zi Yin and Gu Nanhai were unable to gain much of an advantage against him. If one were to weigh his strength, he would likely be the strongest person present other than the purifying demonic lotus flame. Moreover, due to his aura being strange, it was likely that even the chief of the Hall of Souls would not be able to detect that the strength of this man with a numb expression was overwhelming. This character that others didn't know about would protect Xiao Yan's group. You are currently the only clan member of the Xiao clan who currently possesses the bloodline strength. Rest assured that I will do my best to protect you. Xiao Qin slowly shook his head before glancing at Xiao Yan's young face. As he studied this member from younger generation who shared the same bloodline as him, his somewhat numb face finally revealed a gentle smile for the first time. This talent of yours is many times stronger compared to mine. The Xiao clan will have a chance to be revitalized with you around. I have committed far too many reckless actions in the past and had brought much trouble on the clan members. Now that the heavens have given me this opportunity, I will contribute everything I have to the Xiao clan, even if it requires my life. Xiao Yin was quiet. He once again respectfully cupped his hands to Xiao Chun. Only then did he turn his head and quickly sweep his gaze around. There were a total of 8 experts present whose strength was at the 4th star of the Doshang class and above. Since Xiao Chun wasn't able to join the fight, there were only 7 individuals joining hands to fight the purifying demonic lotus flame. This lineup was relatively frightening. They would have a high chance of success even while facing the terrifying strength of the purifying demonic lotus flame. The chief of the Hall of Souls took the lead to step through the air while Xiao Yin was calculating their chances of victory in his heart. His body paused, and he appeared within 1,000 feet from the purifying demonic lotus flame. The remaining experts also moved their bodies and formed a circular shape around the purifying demonic lotus flame. 7 4-star doshangs. Just this aura alone was worthy of shocking the world. The might from the 7 working together could cause the world to change. The other people around exchanged grave expressions with each other upon seeing the lineup in the sky. They swiftly pulled back in unison. There was nothing they could do to help during this earth-shaking battle. The purifying demonic lotus flame, standing on a magma pillar, smiled while everyone quickly pulled back. His handsome face slowly lifted into a strange smile. What a scene that one yearns for. Fire Demon Halberd. The purifying demonic lotus flame's hand gently clenched the air while he faced the endless sea of magma below. One could see a portion of the magma sea began to churn. A dense white long flame halberd suddenly shot out of the magma and appeared in the hands of the purifying demonic lotus flame in a flash. I have been sealed for thousands of years. Today, anyone who blocks me shall die. The purifying demonic lotus flame suddenly lifted his head after the final word was suddenly emitted from his mouth. He widened his mouth, and a giant demonic flame wave that was a couple thousand feet large suddenly shot out. That terrifying temperature caused the expression of the chief of the Hall of Souls and the others to change. Attack together. The eyes of the chief of the Hall of Souls flickered. Black vapor surged out of his body in all directions. After which, the vapor appeared like churning clouds as they collided with that large fire wave. But the black fog scattered upon contact. The large fire wave separated and transformed into 7 huge fire pillars that ruthlessly smashed toward the 7 individuals. Ziyin and the rest did not dare to slight the purifying demonic lotus flame after sensing it unleash such a strength when attacking. Doqi hurriedly surged from their bodies. Many shockingly powerful Do skills were formed. Bang, bang, bang. The fire pillars exploded in the sky. They appeared like the most beautiful fireworks ever displayed. But beneath that beauty hid a destructive force. Trump, trump. Sparks erupted in the sky as 7 figures staggered back. Half of the clothes of Yao Wangue from the Yao clan and an elder of the Shi clan were burned, causing them to appear quite miserable. Their appearances clearly indicated that the 7 of them did not enjoy the slightest advantage against the purifying demonic lotus flame despite working together. Great tragedy hand. An icy cold smile surfaced on the purifying demonic lotus flame's handsome face after obtaining an advantage with an attack. His body floated in the sky as his right hand suddenly grabbed at the sea of magma below. One could see the sea of magma below suddenly exploding as a 10,000-foot large magma hand broke away from the sea. It was accompanied by a shocking heat as it shot toward them. Boom! The speed of the magma hand was mind-boggling. The hand came and ruthlessly slammed into the 7 individuals as though they were houseflies before they could even retaliate. It emitted some splashing sound as it returned to the magma below. Ant-like creatures. Xiaoyan's group watched this exchange. The shock on their faces became denser. 7 experts who had reached the 4th star of the Doshang class had ended up miserable due to the hands of the purifying demonic lotus flame. Although the purifying demonic lotus flame possessed the advantage in terms of terrain, this overwhelming attack was really a little too ferocious. Bang bang! The surface of the sea of magma exploded apart. A couple of miserable figures once again charged forward. They floated in the air, AA green and white mixed on their faces. They were all top-notch experts on the central plains. Since when had they been beaten into such a state? Everyone, if we continue to hold our strength back, we will not get a chance to attack again. The chief of the Hall of Souls coldly cried out with a gloomy expression. They would likely begin to lose some people if this continued. The 6 others frowned upon hearing his words. The 2 fierce strikes from the purifying demonic lotus flame earlier had caused their bodies to suffer some injuries, especially injuries from the demonic flame force. They were momentarily unable to expel it despite their strength. We can only defeat the purifying demonic lotus flame before deciding on what to do. This thought flashed across everyone's minds. Their expressions slowly became grave. The originally vast and mighty auras of the 7 individuals floating beside the purifying demonic lotus flame swiftly soared. Roar! Ziyan's delicate figure shook as a dragon's roar reverberated across this realm. She transformed into a 10,000-foot-large dragon phoenix body. She flapped her huge phoenix wings and stirred waves of hot tornadoes. A terrifying pressure also descended. Why does this ancient void dragon have such a form? The chief of the Hall of Souls looked at Ziyan's transformation. He was startled. His eyes slightly flickered. A moment later, he hurriedly tossed aside the doubt within his heart. His hand seals quickly changed. A vast and mighty Do Chi that caused even the world to tremble spread from his body. It seemed that he had begun to unleash all of his strength at this moment. The remaining 5 individuals clenched their teeth and ceased holding back after Ziyan, and the chief of the Hall of Souls unleashed their full strengths. Wild wind blew over this area at this moment. Dark clouds gathered and thunderbolts raged. Even the magma sea region below had begun to wildly roar, stirring 1,000-foot-large waves of magma. The 7 4-star Do Shang had finally displayed their greatest strengths. The purifying demonic lotus flame lifted his brow after sensing the sudden surge in everyone's auras. He coldly laughed. It's only interesting this way. Fire slaves. Kill everyone else. Just these fire slaves are enough. The purifying demonic lotus flame lowered his eyes. He glanced at Xiao Yan's group in the distance. A dense smile surfaced on his handsome face while his indifferent voice slowly gave a command. Roar! Those 10 Do Shang fire slaves suspended in the air suddenly opened their eyes after the purifying demonic lotus flame's words sounded. Those hollow eyes emitted 2 clusters of cream-colored purifying demonic lotus flames. Their bodies moved as they charged toward Xiao Yan's group without hesitation. The entire realm turned into an uproar in an instant. Withdraw. A grave expression surged onto the faces of Xiao Yan's group as they watched these Do Shang fire slaves rushing over. A soft cry sounded, and he took the lead to pull back. Although there were many Do Shangs on their side, they would not fearlessly charge forward and block these fire slaves, who knew no pain or fatigue. Sun Er and the rest hurriedly followed after seeing Xiao Yan withdraw. They did not head to those large groups of people. Instead, they found a spacious location of their own. Some mere fire slaves dare to audaciously claim that they can finish off this chief. The deputy hall chief of the Hall of Souls coldly laughed, but he did not appear to panic. Given his advanced 3-star Do Shang strength, he could look down on the strongest fire slave present. Hence, he was not the least bit worried about the 10 elite Do Shang. Deputy Hall Chief, do not take the initiative to attack. We will fight if a fire slave steps forward. Otherwise, let's just watch the show. Han Feng spoke in an indifferent voice. All right. The deputy chief of the Hall of Souls strangely laughed upon hearing this. His eyes were filled with ill intent as he looked at Xiao Yan. His eyes flickered. No one knew what he was thinking. The other experts hurriedly gathered together as the Do Shang fire slaves moved. Their eyes revealed some caution as they looked at the 10 fire figures who had appeared a short distance away in the blink of an eye. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 10 fire figures appeared in front of everyone. Those hollow eyes slowly scanned the area before they rushed forward. All of them headed in different directions as they flew toward the target they had chosen beforehand. Be careful. Xiao Yan let out a low cry after seeing these fire slaves split up. Perhaps it was due to them having the most people, but 3 Do Shang fire slaves headed in their direction. The strongest among them was an advanced 2-star Do Shang. It was not very difficult to deal with them. "Leave the advanced 2-star Dosheng fire slave to me." Xiao Yin gently stretched his fingers as he spoke. "Leave that initial 2-star Dosheng to me." Sun Er also smiled and spoke. "In that case, I will deal with the last one." The first elder of the Pill Tower laughed. The final fire slave was an advanced 1-star Dosheng. Given his strength, it would not be difficult to obtain victory. Everyone else should be careful. "Pay attention to the activity of others," Xiao Yin cried out in a deep voice after the allocation of manpower was completed. His body moved, and he appeared in front of the advanced 2-star Dosheng fire slave. The vast and powerful Do Qi within his body moved. He clenched his hand, and the heavy Xin ruler appeared in his palm. He quickly waved the ruler and ruthlessly hacked at that fire slave's head with a wild attack. Clang! A layer of cream-white fire burned on the body of that fire slave as it faced Xiao Yan's ferocious strike. The fire slave lifted its arm and forcefully blocked Xiao Yan's heavy ruler. Sparks shot out from the point of contact. Roar! After forcefully receiving this ruler's strike from Xiao Yan, the cream-white flame on the body of the fire slave seemed to possess an intelligence of its own as it suddenly surged and turned into a ferocious huge mouth that bit at Xiao Yan. What a strange, purifying, demonic lotus flame! Xiao Yan was extremely afraid of the purifying demonic lotus flame. He could not allow these demonic flames to adhere to his body, so he moved and appeared behind the fire slave. Both of his hands were lifted. Dark black light circles spread from his hand with lightning-like speed. Great Heaven Creation Palm. 2 dark black light circles swiftly surfaced on Xiao Yan's palm. With his current strength, it was possible for him to use his other hand to unleash the Great Heaven Creation Palm. After all, his current strength might even be greater than the owner of the Great Heaven Creation Palm. Bang bang! The light circles surged before ruthlessly smashing into the Dosheng fire slave. An unusually powerful force struck the cream-white flame on the fire slave's body until it became a little dimmer, but this kind of damage was unable to hinder the attacks of the fire slaves since it didn't possess any senses. The fire slave unleashed a sharp retaliation. This had caused Xiao Yan to momentarily panic, but he quickly focused his mind and gradually obtained the upper hand. He would scatter some of the cream-white flame on the fire slave's body each time a palm wind fell. Once the demonic flame on the fire slave's body completely vanished, its strength would diminish. While Xiao Yan was revealing his great might and pushing this advanced Dosheng fire slave toward defeat, both Sun Er and the First Elder also obtained quite a great result. The strength of the two of them was stronger than their respective fire slaves. Adding their agility and powerful Do skills, they were able to gain the upper hand despite feeling a little restrained because of their fear of the flames on those fire slaves. The entire sky above the Sea of Magma was enveloped in an array of extremely intense battles. Of course, the most fiery hot and terrifying aspect was naturally the 100,000-foot-wide battleground at the middle. It was the battleground of the 7 4-star Dosheng and the purifying demonic lotus flame. After the 7 cooperating 4-star Doshengs unleashed their full strength, the purifying demonic lotus flame began to get entangled with them. Regardless of how strong it was, the heavenly flame's opponents still had a far greater number of people. Moreover, all of them possessed a lot of battle experience. Although it was their first time working together, their cooperation was operational. Even the purifying demonic lotus flame had to brace its attention when their combined attacks came and treat them seriously. No one dared step into this 100,000-foot-large battleground in the sky. Frightening storms whistled within it. Waves of entwining energy storms spread in an extremely chaotic manner that did not differentiate between friend or foe. Anyone swept into it would suffer a fatal blow. There were many relatively smaller battles taking place outside of the big battleground. This was where Xiao Yan's group was battling the fire slaves. Xiao Yan's group had been allocated 3 of the 10 Dosheng fire slaves. The remaining 7 had also sank into an intense battle with the other experts. There were quite a number of experts who had stepped into the demonic flame realm this time around. If one were to count their numbers, they would far surpass these 10 Dosheng fire slaves. However, in terms of quality, they were somewhat inferior to these fire slaves. Among the 10 fire slaves, everyone had discovered that there were 2 who had reached the 3rd star of the Dosheng class after a battle. One of the 2 3-star Dosheng was being held back by the deputy chief of the Hall of Souls, while no one else could block the other. After all, those 4-star Doshengs were already fighting the purifying demonic lotus flame. The strongest person present was the deputy chief of the Hall of Souls, but even he had been caught up in the big battle. This final 3-star Dosheng seemed to have become a fierce wolf as it charged into a herd of goat and went on a rampage. Any expert it met was frightened to the point of retreating. In the end, 3 experts, whose strength had barely reached the 2nd star of the Dosheng class, ended up holding it back. Of course, there were still some elite Dozuns, who had luckily survived remaining in the sky. Most of these people might be at the peak of the Dozun class, but they did not dare to get involved in a battle between Doshengs. Each and every one of them could only flee and get as far away as possible. Only at this moment did they discover just how foolish it was to enter this demonic flame realm. Yellow Spring Palm. An enormous energy palm suddenly formed in the sky. It was accompanied by a vast and mighty strength as it ruthlessly smashed into the body of the fire slave. A frightening force scattered the final demonic flame on the fire slave's body. After this final flame was scattered, that fire slave, which had been going all out to attack, suddenly became much slower. Its might was greatly diminished as it attacked. Looks like these flames are their source of energy. Xiao Yin mused within his heart upon noticing this change. It seemed that this fire slave was not as perfect as he had imagined. I wonder if I can use the earlier spiritual symbol from that light cluster to temporarily obtain control of this fire slave. Xiao Yan's eyes flickered. His eyes swiftly swept around him as his heart pounded. If he could control these fire slaves, his strength would undoubtedly soar. Xiao Yan acted the moment after he thought about using the symbol, since he understood the current situation. His body moved, and he appeared in front of that fire slave. The space became still with a wave of his hand. That weakened fire slave froze. At the same time, Xiao Yan's fingers swiftly formed a mysterious fluctuation. He drew a mysterious symbol on the forehead of that fire slave by using his spiritual strength. Go! The symbol was imprinted onto the forehead of the fire slave as Xiao Yan cried out the moment it was formed. This symbol merged with the fire slave's skin before it entered its mind. Bang! After this spiritual symbol entered the mind of the fire slave, Xiao Yan quickly sensed an extreme heat being emitted from the other party's mind. He was able to use a feeling to see the deepest part of the fire slave's mind. There was a cream-white fire bead lingering in that spot, and inside the fire bead was an extremely terrifying energy. The spiritual symbol invaded the fire slave's mind. It lingered around the cream-white fire bead before it emitted wave after wave of mysterious barriers. It slowly began to isolate the fire bead. An additional feeling appeared in Xiao Yan's heart the moment the fire bead was isolated. His heart moved and the fire slave in front of him quietly lowered its arm. It quietly stood beside him like a servant. I am able to control it. A wild joy that could not be hidden immediately appeared on Xiao Yan's face after he realized he could control it. If he were able to control these 10 fire slaves, the lineup beneath him would erupt like a rocket. At that time, it would be possible for him to destroy the Hall of Souls.